I hear you. It's crack-a-lackin'.
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, brother. How are you?
Good. I'm eating breakfast this morning, so please bear with me.
Okay. No problem, dude. I see you have all the vodka and the honey and all in the background. What are you eating, brother?
I got some eggs and sausage here, so.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Feels good. It feels good to be at home at 10:36 with no worry in the world, relaxing, eating some eggs and sausage.
There you go. Well, I mean, sure. I mean, today's my first day of, being unemployed, so it's great. I get to collect unemployment, don't have to report to anybody, so it's good.
Yeah. Nice, dude. Nice. How's Patrick? Is he running around?
He's good. He's at a swimming class today.
Oh, cool. Awesome, dude.
Yep.
Fantastic. Fucking A, man. Awesome, dude. So I had a podcast last night with the president of China, so that was really interesting.
That's great.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was actually a friend of mine who moved from LA and didn't know Chinese, just decided to move to China. And he only planned on staying there a year. And he started teaching, and now he's got his own salsa studio in China.
Wow. Yeah,
it's a really interesting story. He was well known here, not the best, not the greatest, crazy, most known dancer, but now he's got his own studio, and he's pretty successful. So it's kind of interesting to hear his story.
That's right.
Awesome, brother. So let's get started. So welcome to the show, Cully. Woo! Yeah, I finally got you on the show. And right when I say that, someone's trying to track you down and call you. That's how much you're in demand, dude.
No.
Oh, man. So
what is your show about? I mean, you basically, find people who are your friends, and you basically try to mention, their skill or trade. So, what would you do for me?
Right. Exactly. So, and to kind of, touch on this, I've known you for a long time.
Yep, we're good friends. Friends for about 12.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years. And, we grew up in Carson.
That's right.
I always
which is really a great city.
What's that?
Carson's a great city.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've grew up there, and I've seen it gentrify a lot, and I think a lot of people kind of see that Carson's also a great city. It's very diverse for one.
Yeah.
It's close to everything. It's close to West LA. It's close to Orange County. It's close to the beaches. So it's kind of central if you're in Los Angeles. Yeah.
It is, man. So, dude, let me ask you, dude. I want to hear your story, because one thing about you, I've known you for a long time. Mm-hmm. There's a few people that we know, like Dustin and a few others that know you as well. But when I first met you, you were just starting your business. It was Stat Solutions. You had your own business. Yep. And see, man, that's the jobs, man. They want you, man. You're on fire. Let's get this guy hired. So tell us about that, dude. How did you get into IT? Because you're basically today a programmer, right? Or what would you say your title is, or as far as
expertise? I grew up in Carson, and now I live in Silicon Valley. So I actually am part of the tech workers, or group of tech people that drive up all the real estate prices and cost of living in the Bay Area. So I am a tech worker, and basically what I do is I am in DevOps. So my current job is DevOps, and basically I work with software developers to build better quality code for them, deliver the code into what they call production. So when you go to a website or go to your mobile phone, and everybody goes to a website and they take it for granted. It's like a utility. You go to your website, and all of a sudden you get your video, your content, your communication with your friends. And I'm involved in that sort of business. So basically I make sure that those kinds of things are working up all the time, is working 24/7. How do we build tools to scale that? So that's my trade. But I actually got into computers when I was a kid. So I lived in a small apartment in Carson, and my neighbor, they bought a IBM PC. So back in the early 80s, I was immersed with computers at a very young age. So when I was about 5 years old, I started playing around with the IBM PC, and they had a whole bunch of different computers. So they had the IBM PC, they had something called the Atom computer. So me and their son and daughter, we would go run, play, and they also had this really nice computer. So they had like a $4,000 computer.
Wow.
And it had like a big floppy drive. It had like a tape drive. It had all these little gizmos on it. And we would try to like get these things to work. We would try to get some games. So we would like try to install some games. There would be basic games in a programming language called BASIC. So I would go to their house and start playing with a computer in elementary school. They had I was able to like write 500 lines of code for like a Halloween game.
Wow.
So it was like a programming, it was like this book about like different like games that you could play as long as you type in all of that code. So I typed in 500 lines to get a Halloween jack-o'-lantern.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I did that when I was in 3rd grade, and then finally, because my parents didn't have a lot of money, they saved up enough money for me to buy a computer. So when I went to Catskill for elementary school in Carson, and then I went to Carnegie. Right. And when I went to Carnegie, I met this librarian. His name was Tom Madden. He's a really nice guy. I used to go to the library and hang out with him. And they had an Apple IIe computer. I used to play the Apple IIe. And, I didn't realize at the time, but, he was gay. And there's nothing wrong with being gay, but I was really close to him, and we were really good friends that some of my friends thought we had a relationship, and we didn't. But, years later after he left, I guess he was gay, but he was just really a nice, kind person to me. That's and what happened was right before he retired, he actually sold me his computer for a really good deal. So like he bought this computer for like $2,500, and he sold it to me for about $1,200, and that's how I got my first computer.
Wow. Okay.
And the cool thing was like that first computer really taught me a lot of things. So I had a computer at home now. And at the time, I could type 120 words a minute, and that was back when Windows was coming out. So like,
right.
Windows 3.1, was about to come out. So I mean, like this whole revolution. Rather than going in all this text and typing all the commands, they were doing graphic. There was the beginning of a graphical user interface.
Yeah.
And WYSIWYG, what you see was what you get. And actually, I got that computer, and the computer came with something called a modem. And a modem basically allows, modem stands for modulator demodulator. So you connect your modem to your telephone, and it allows you to send data packets, over the phone. So I was able to actually go around South Bay area and contact other phone numbers. So I could call like other computers. Right. I used to trade software because like back then software was very expensive. To get like a word processor was like $600. Right. So we would basically share software through these it's called the BBS, Bulletin Board System. And I actually met a couple of, sorry about that. I met a couple of friends on I met a lot of interesting people on the bulletin board system. So like, it was like one of the first things you could do in meeting people online. So I was meeting people online when I was like 13 years old, like full grown adults. Like they could have been psycho people. My parents didn't know anything about it. Like, yeah, I mean, it was like that whole thing was very new,
That was literally the first chat. Right?
Yeah, first chat before the internet. So like before the internet came out, like there was these bulletin board systems, and I was actually meeting people online when I was like starting when I was 13. So I meet like full grown men.
Yeah.
And like I met one guy, who basically was a pedophile.
What?
But, yeah, I met a guy that was pretty much a pedophile. He was in a relationship with like a kid that was like 16 years old.
What the fuck?
And he was like a computer consultant, and yeah, I mean it was he told me, I mean, he told me he was in a relationship. Like he had he's gay and he had a boyfriend.
Right.
And like around that age, you kind of wonder about your sexuality. Like for me, I also wondered, like at 13 or 14, whether I was straight or gay.
Right.
And basically later, I decided that I was straight. But back then, you were questioning like what hit puberty, like these kinds of emotions and what you were going through.
Right.
So I met a lot of interesting people online, and actually one person I met was actually my best friend. So I met my best friend on the bulletin board system. He actually had a bulletin board system. It was called the Doghouse BBS.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And he lived in Palos Verdes. He was a year younger than me, so he was 12 years old.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
what happened was I logged in and I was like downloading and sending emails, and then later he like got into control, like chat with the system administrator and said, "Hey, do you want to be my sysop? Do you want to be?" I was like, "Remote sysop." I was like, "Sure, I'll be your remote sysop." And what a remote sysop is a person that administers that bulletin board. Like you get full access and you get to manage the whole thing.
Okay.
So I was like, "Yeah, I'll be your remote sysop." So I was just remote sysop for 6 months. And I never saw him, you know, because like you couldn't send pictures on the modem, like there wasn't any digital cameras, right?
Oh, that's right. And he was 12. He was 12, right? He was 12 years old.
13, and he was 12. So it was like, you know, this was like 1992, right? So, so I was like, all right, you know, we've been talking, and I was like, all right, well, you know, we should meet up and hang out, you know. So yeah, I would go to my parents' house. So my parents drive into Palos Verdes and drop me off. And I go to their house, and like, you know, he opens the door, and he totally doesn't look like anything that I imagined him, you know, like he's really like tall and really skinny, and, like, you know, blue eyes and dark hair, and then and same with me, you know, like I have a deep voice for a short guy.
Right.
He probably thought I was like this tall guy, and I wasn't. So, you know, it was a little awkward, and you know, we got down to where his computer was and what he was up to. Right. And I saw the computer that actually was controlling all these months. It's like a really nice, you know, like $6,000 computer. Wow. And you know, when I sat down to work on the computer, the funny thing was, you know, like I was typing some stuff. He was like right behind me, and he put his hands over my shoulders to type over me. It was really, really weird. And this is like the first time meeting him. Like, dude, this is weird, you know, like this guy, I just meet this guy, I haven't seen him before, and he now just puts his hands right over my shoulders to type over what I'm typing. Like this, you know, that's just a little weird, you know.
Yeah, especially for a 13-year-old, it's a little.
Yeah, for a 13-year-old.
What the fuck is going on over here? Right.
So, you know, after that, you know, he left, and you know, we started talking, and you know, we became friends, and we saw each other at other like places. We went to the TRW computer swap meet. You know, so, like there'd be a computer swap meet every so often on Saturday, so I'd bump into him, and yeah, and then after that, I you know, in terms of my computer history, you know, I got out of Carnegie and I went to the California Academy of Math and Sciences in Carson. So I was the second graduating class. Right. So I was really into computers, and they started this new high school at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And I liked it. It was like a startup. It was like a new concept. You know, it was a partnership between LA Unified, Long Beach Unified, and the Cal State system. Cool. And they were trying to bring like, you know, people that were interested in like, you know, math and science into the school. So when I went there, they had access. They had access to like, we had access to like very high end Unix computers. So it was a DEC Alpha machine. It was like a $50,000 computer, wow, you know, for physics, and they actually allowed us to use it, and they actually had an internet connection, so they had like a fractional T1, which costed, you know, insane amounts of money. Yeah, wow. They actually had an internet connection.
Holy shit! And it was a T1 line.
It was a T1 line. So it was actually a you know, the internet came from universities and military, right? So like it was one of those computers, and those computers had, you know, like Gopher, news groups, you know, very basic. You know, it was like the prototypical internet. You know, like they didn't come out with the graphical web browser yet. Right. So I was able to get news group information on like street, you know, Mortal Kombat moves. Right. You know, because Mortal Kombat 2 was out, and
that's right. Okay. Right.
The people who made the game always updated the software, so there was always more moves that you could learn, and they were always changing the firmware, which was a lot of fun. So like there was different def moves that would come out. So like we would get the like forum news group of the def moves, and we would try it out. You know, so we would get like, and then they also had a laser printer. And back then, a laser printer was very expensive. Right. So we'd use a laser printer, print 50 pages. And go out to the arcade, and we'd have this whole stack of moves, you know, and all the people, yeah, they're like, would share it, you know, figure out what it is, get copies of the moves, and then, you know, play them. And in high school, I always wanted to be into computers. I didn't really know if it was going to be a career. So I went to college at Cal Poly Pomona and majored in computer information systems. Cool. And once I got there, you know, I was a little like, you know, I went to a really competitive high school. So I mean, I was like a C student. I wasn't really a good student.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was good in computers. I got A minus in computer science, but
Right.
like I was just kind of I don't know, just not too motivated. Like
Right.
school wasn't that interesting. It was really boring. I had a lot of assignments, and a lot of times I didn't do it. I just didn't like school. And a lot of my friends went to like Ivy League, UCLA, Stanford, Berkeley, because I mean my peers were like really smart and they worked hard. I was smart but didn't really work too hard.
Right.
So I was kind of like the slacker. By the time I made it to Cal Poly Pomona, it was a little sad. It was a lower tier school.
Right.
And it wasn't like the level of my peers at Cal Poly was not nowhere close to the level of CAMS. Like I was kind of like sent to like prison, or I don't know. It almost seemed
He said prison.
well, I mean like the people that don't get into the UC schools or Ivy
Right.
League, you go to Cal State, you're like kind of like on the bottom of the bucket.
Right.
In a lot of ways, it was kind of a good thing, because when I went to Cal Poly Pomona, I got to see a lot of people from different areas, and I made a lot of friends. Like most of my friends that I know came from college and after college. I don't really keep a lot of friends from high school, right? So after 3 years of being in Cal Poly Pomona, I decided to drop out. I wasn't doing so well with the school. I had a part-time job as an IT technician that was paying very good money at the time. And I decided to start my own IT consulting business. So when I turned 20 years old, I started my own IT consulting business, and I opened an office in Long Beach. So it was in Bixby Knolls area.
Did you start right from the get-go opening up an office in Long Beach, or did you start from home first?
I started from home, and I already had a couple of customers. And then at that time, I wanted to start, open an office. And I moved into my office at like in 2001. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was it was I knew nothing about running a business.
Right.
I knew some stuff about computers, but running my own business, you gotta like learn other things other than your craft. You gotta learn how to like manage people, do taxes. You gotta do accounting. You gotta do sales. So there's a lot of different things that you gotta do to run a business. Just because you're good in one thing doesn't mean that you're going to be good at running a business. Running a business is a totally different hat. Right. And I didn't really realize that. So 90% of businesses fail in 5 years, and then of the 10% that survives on the 6th year, 90% of those will fail. So I had that business running for over 10 years.
Nice.
It didn't really make a lot of money for me,
right.
But I did learn a lot, and I did a lot of different things to make my business successful. So I was part of the BNI, Business Networking International. I would show up Thursday mornings, and I would meet with other small business owners, and basically we would try to network. And I met a lot of friends, like a lot of people that were kind of like in the same position as me. They were small business owners, local, in Long Beach, and it was a lot of fun. No. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was kind of the problem, was that I thought I was going to do IT consulting.
Right.
And here's the thing about IT, is that everybody has IT problems. It's a matter of whether they want to pay for it or not. And right. I was in the office in Long Beach that didn't really have like good clientele where it could be affordable living. In fact, I was competing against another computer repair shop out in Lomita.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I did. And they were also in that low end segment. So basically they got people in with a very cheap $39 computer repair. Okay. And what they would do is like, they would look at it for 30 minutes and say, hey, it's going to cost $100 to fix. You owe us $39. Well, for me, I didn't really have a very good workflow. Right. And I would, do a lot of work on the computer, like spend hours on the computer for only $39. So, right. It was really hard to make a living off of that, So I was making very little money running my business because I had a lot of expenses. I had to have employees. I had an office. I had to buy insurance. I had utility bills. So by the time I had to pay myself, it was very little. And what I realized was I was kind of in the wrong business, So like Long Beach isn't really a technology hub. It wasn't really a tech hub. Yeah. So it just had people that had computers, but they weren't going to spend a lot of money to really repair it. And also another thing was I had a lot of, like if your computer's broken, you probably just buy another one, right? So right. So the cost of computers when I started in 2001, that might have been a $1,000 computer. Now you can buy a computer for like $200 and does. Yeah. Almost as much as that $1,000 computer back in the day, or even less. Right. So I was kind of in a low end market, and I that was trouble. That was a lot. That was really challenging. And then finally, I decided to go back and finish my bachelor's degree. So when I turned, let's see here, 31 years old, I went back and went to this online school called Western Governors University,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished my degree. Finally, finished my degree in information technology with an emphasis of security.
Nice.
And once I got my bachelor's degree, I was able to land a job making $100,000 a year. So it was very good.
And this was in the South Bay, or is this when you decided to move up north?
This was in the South Bay.
So
Okay. I was still living at home, and once I got that job making six figures, I was in Beverly Hills. I moved to LA, Mid Wilshire, LA. So I lived in LA for about a year and a half, and then I decided to quit because the work was very difficult, and I actually decided to work for a company called Square Enix, which is a Japanese gaming company.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to lay off the team after 6 months, so I got a job offer to move to Palo Alto. In 2013, so there was a company called AppLovin, so I moved up there.
So that's why. So you just were sending out resumes, and then you got a job offer, and that's the reason why you moved up north.
Yeah, so I'm very aggressive with looking for a job. I usually send out 100 resumes, so I have like a whole worksheet and stuff like that, and it's like a numbers game.
Mm.
And I didn't even apply to this company. So the recruiter told me, hey, there's this educational company and this other company. Actually, I had a job offer from Sony.
Oh, cool.
So I could have worked for Sony or this startup.
Right.
And that startup was very convincing. They're like, hey, we're going to go to Vegas in 2 months, and we want you to go. We want you to join. The CEO personally asked me to join the company, and he called me many times for me to join. So I was like, you know what? This guy really wants me to join. Let's see what their deal is. They seem like a bunch of people, seemed pretty cool to me.
Cool.
And things went well there. I worked there for 5.5 years, and it was a successful exit. So they got a $1.5 billion investment from a Chinese company, and I got some money out of that, which was nice. So
nice.
it kind of I mean, all those years of making, very little money, I had friends that graduated from college when they were 22 or 23. Always, for me in my life, I always felt like I was behind on things,
right,
behind the curve, from going to, not having, the best grades and then going to this, consulting business. Cause I could have, I have friends with computer science degrees making good money all those times without having so many heartaches,
Right.
So, I mean, I went through a lot of failures in my life.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have, at least a win,
Right.
And then after that, I did some real estate investing. So like I've bought a couple of properties, and, that's kind of like my side hobby,
Right.
and, that's doing well, and, that pretty much pays for itself,
Right.
So that's just kind of like a cushion, just in case anything happens. I have
that first job when you actually went to Palo Alto. What exactly did you do there? Did you do similar what you were doing in your own business, or did you?
No, it was completely different. It was mobile. I monetized mobile apps. So basically, mobile phones was like the future.
Okay.
Basically the CEO just told me that, hey, look at you. You're holding the phone. That's going to be the new TV.
Right.
The TV is the future. No one's looking at the TV anymore. They're looking at their phone. This is the new media. This is the new medium. There's tons of money that can be made there. And basically, he's going to teach me, what this is all about. And they did. They taught me they taught me lots of things about mobile and how to advertise on it, and what mobile app monetization is.
Did you know already how to design or create apps or anything when it involves to programming of phones or creating apps?
No, I didn't. So basically, I did more of like the infrastructure, just like when you go to like your mobile app and you see like content coming out of there. Where does it come from? It comes from servers. So I was involved in that sort of business.
Okay.
So that part of it, continues. So like all the things I learned in IT consulting and working for, companies, millwalled into that sort of opportunity. And I was able to, help them build out the infrastructure. So, I mean, they had a budget of, basically I raised the budget by 100x. So I scaled their infrastructure by 100x. So,
nice.
From being, they only had very little money in funding to, being a unicorn, $1 billion exit. So, and being like a global player, having a presence, in, basically, having mobile users in Asia, mobile users in the United States, North America, mobile users in Europe. So, I mean, basically, building that entire infrastructure to make money on all of those markets.
Wow. So you were there for 5.5 years, and then you transitioned to a different company in Silicon Valley?
Yes. So after that, I worked for a company called Workday, and they do, actually it's called Adaptive Insights, and they do HR software, actually financial planning software. So basically, if you're a CFO of a public company, every quarter you got to post, financial results, right? Balance sheet, income statement, cash flow. So basically, it's a piece of software that allows you to do that in a matter of hours versus days. It imports from major accounting software and makes you nice reports. It has bells and whistles, and allows you to make these reports in a more efficient way. Nice. And the company got acquired by a company called Workday, which is an HR software company. Yep.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Awesome, dude. So you're right there in the hub of Silicon Valley, where all big tech is located.
It is. Yeah. So I mean, like Silicon Valley is kind of like a small community. So I mean, I didn't really know too much about Silicon Valley before I got here, but now I do. So like, there is like big tech here, and it's gentrifying like this whole area, and it's the place to be. I mean, all of the smartest people in the world live in Silicon Valley. It's where you can get paid very well, and you can work with a lot of smart people. That's the best way to think about it.
Didn't you mention that the most expensive city in the country is in Silicon Valley somewhere?
Yeah, it's in a city called Atherton, which is near Palo Alto. That's where Mark Zuckerberg lives.
Okay,
and that's the most expensive town.
Wow.
I mean, it's the richest town, like the highest per capita.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome, dude. So this is your journey is amazing, because you started learning computers, you started your own business, and then you found out within your own business that, I'm not making money doing this.
Yep.
And then you just bombarded every single company out there with your resume. Mm-hmm. And you got that first offer. What made you move? What made you think to yourself, like, what? This is it. Palo Alto, that's where I'm going. What made you?
Well, I didn't know for sure.
You didn't know for sure.
I know the Stanford is in Palo Alto.
Yeah. Okay.
I should step on my friend's couch for 3 weeks in San Jose.
Right.
To know for sure that this was it for me, because like moving is kind of a big thing. I never moved anywhere outside of LA.
Right. Exactly.
But for anybody that grew up in their hometown and still lives in their hometown, I highly suggest them leaving their hometown and live in a different city for a couple of years, because it's a great experience. It makes you more independent, and you just see a lot of different things that you didn't see before.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. That's amazing. So, and dude, what did like, as far as what are you doing now?
Right now I'm just looking for opportunities. I'm at that position now where I could start my own company. I have friends. Nice. I got investors, and I got some money to start it.
Cool.
I could look for another job.
Awesome.
I could take time off. So I guess I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I mean, to be unemployed, you kind of, it's never a great feeling. But I'm 42 years old. A lot of, people who became very successful did it in their 40s.
Right. Exactly.
So like, Sam Walton ran four.
That's true. In his 40s, right?
It was called Nickel and Dimes, and the owners didn't want to give him a piece of that business, so he started Walmart, or was it? I think it's called Sam's, or I think he started
Walton's. Yeah.
I think he started his first Walmart and partnered with his brother, so they pulled the money together to do it in his 40s, and he started from ground zero. And then Abraham Lincoln, he didn't become president until he was in his late 40s. Before that, he was kind of a failure. He was, he served a single term as a House of Representatives, 2 failed Senate races, and he even wrote that he doesn't know if people would ever recognize him, and he's like one of the most famous presidents that we know. So, right. So I mean, look, there's still hope, and I'm kind of like in my prime in terms of my career, mid-career. So,
right.
So who knows?
Dude. So what kind of advice can you give people who want to be successful in Silicon Valley, that really that have the schooling, that have they're IT. What kind of advice can you give them?
Well, first thing I would say is that success isn't a place. It's a journey. So you always want to strive for success. And number two, you got to be very persistent, and it's a numbers game. You got to keep interviewing. A lot of times when you interview, they give you like a whiteboarding. They give you this whole interview process. Some of those questions you're not going to get right. I've gone through a lot of interviews, and I've gotten a lot of no's. Most of them are no's, and it only takes one yes for me to move on to my next journey in my career, right? So write notes every time they ask you to go on an interview. Write a lot of notes on what they really want, and even if you don't answer the question right, try to think really hard or ask around to see what they're really talking about, and then eventually you're going to get into the correct answer. So if they ask you that question again, you're going to know exactly what to say. So a lot of it is studying the material and then knowing what to say when these questions are asked. Yeah, and even if you don't have that kind of experience, there's still that good answer that people want to hear.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, Silicon Valley is great, and I mean, you got to spend a lot of time, studying it. It's got to be a passion, like a lot of times when I interview people, I can tell if you're here for the money or if you actually like technology.
Okay, good point.
I usually ask them like, hey, what do you do for personal development? Tell me about a hobby that you do.
Right.
So like if they have a Linux computer at their house. They got a web server. They're running a Raspberry Pi at their house. Arduino. Then I know that they are like a tech enthusiast. So like that's a good sign. Usually we try to hire people who are tech enthusiasts. It's like if someone tells me a story about having a bulletin board system when they were a kid running around and downloading software and emailing, then that's probably a good candidate because that person probably knows a lot about technology and they've been in it for a long time.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
And actually, a lot of people don't have that experience. A lot of people it's a job. A lot of people they're in
for the money. They just want the money.
They're an engineer because it's good money, but it's not their passion.
Yeah. So you definitely have to have the passion to get into this business. That's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But one thing that
and having that passion these days is considered cool now, right?
Yeah, but also there's the quality that you have that many don't have, whereas you will pick up a book. Like if you don't know how to use Python, you'll pick up a book and learn it on your own, which is, and that I guess goes back to the passion for technology that you have.
Right.
You have this ability of just, okay, I'm just going to figure it out.
Right.
Which is something that most people don't have.
Well, I'm self-taught. So I never really necessarily did well in school.
Right, which is crazy, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because a lot of your success comes from you just learning it on your own, which is freaking impressive.
You gotta do it. One thing you gotta do is figure out how you learn. People learn a lot of different ways. So like some people like to work with somebody when they're learning. Some people like visual, like they're watching a video. Some people like lecture. Some people like to just open a book and just do the work themselves. Or and for me, I never liked going to class with a lecture. Yeah. I wanted just to do the work, like just get a book and a paper and start doing the work. So I mean, I think you got to really understand how your style of learning. If you want to be good at school or learning some sort of craft,
figure out what your style is, and then just
figure out what your style of learning is, and then try to implement that. Because I think the style of learning in education now is flawed. Right now, it's just a lecture.
Right.
You got quarters or semesters, and then you get a grade. And basically, what happens is sometimes you didn't study the material in time, and you'll get a bad grade. So, but maybe like a month, you get a couple of weeks or another month, you got an A because you actually learned the material. So was it important that you got an A during that time frame, or you just learned the material, right?
Right.
If you learn the material, if it took you more than if it took you 4 months rather than 2 months, you shouldn't be reprimanded for that. So, I mean, I think that's what was happening with me, was that I did eventually learn the material, except that it took me a little bit longer. And And nothing wrong with that. But I shouldn't be considered a C student. I did learn it. It just came out that way, right? Just the way the school structure is. And that's the thing about like education and certifications. It's if you live in an inner city, if you don't live in a nice area, it's stacked against you, right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Right.
When you grow up in a nice area, you have a nicer school. Why do you have nicer schools? Because houses there are more expensive. They pay taxes, higher taxes. Those higher taxes go in for more money for schools, so better books, better chairs, better facilities,
better teachers.
Yeah, right. So you're getting like it's like unfortunately the way education works, it's like it's like a trickle down setup. Basically, if you got money, your family's got money, you have a higher chance of being making the same kind of money that they did. Right. But if you're like people like ourselves, like my parents are from modest means. They believe education is important, but look, they rented for a long time. So I mean, we didn't really have like the best schools in the world. We had books with a lot of like scribbling, a lot of graffiti on the tables, graffiti outside around the corner. So, and then the teachers there, weren't paid as much, right? So I mean, they cared less. So, it is what it is. But even in that circumstance, if you're a parent and you're very interested in your child's learning, they're going to recognize that. So I mean, it doesn't matter. Like a lot of it, like sure, like part of it is your environment, but also number two, your parents. So if you have parents that really cared about education, then that's going to help you. So like my dad, he really cared about my education. He would like every year he would give my dad would give my teachers like really, really good gifts, like the best gifts. Like my dad would go in and like
make sure my kid passes.
No, like my
here's
dad
a box of apples.
Yeah, my dad would buy like chocolates. Like he would spend like $40, like in third grade, like some big ass flowers. Like my dad went all out, like my
dad's fucking bribing the teachers, bro.
Yeah, my dad's like, my kid's life is in your hands.
Here's a box of chocolates.
So in the meantime, here's here's a very nice gift for you guys. Please take care of my kids. I was just like, and then every time, my dad never, my parents were busy, like basically I would go to school in the morning. They would go to work, but I would go home by myself eventually, and I wouldn't see them until 5 or 6 because they're busy working, right? My mom works Saturdays. My mom still works Saturdays.
Yeah.
My mom's working like 50, 60 hours a week. Dad's working full time, so I would never see them. So like, they didn't really have time to like, go to like parent teacher conferences. They didn't have time to go watch me at the clubs. Like I was on a swim team in high school, and I was junior varsity. I was very skinny, and I lost every single race. Like we would swim and work out and stuff like that. And then like every week we'd have a swim meet against all these different, high schools. So like it was a prep league, so all these like rich private high schools, we would be competing against them. And since we were such a small high school, it was new high school, we would always lose.
Right. Wow.
But it was very like there was a lot of camaraderie, right? And basically I was like this really skinny kid, and I had really bad swimming technique because I was new to swimming, and I would lose every time. And there was no one there to cheer me on, no help. And then a lot of times people didn't really talk to me because they didn't talk to me because they knew I was really slow.
Right.
I was like at the bottom of the totem pole.
Not anymore. Now you're a fucking beast to the point. You could beat everybody except for one person. We both know who that is.
I see. But I mean, it's kind of good to be the underdog. Like I was always
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
My parents didn't have time to come, and you kind of got tougher, right. It's like every time you went to swim, it was like, how the hell do I try not to be the last place? And sometimes, most of the time you did. Now there was one time, there was another kid, skinny with glasses just like me. He was in the other team, and he was also very slow too.
Wow. And
I saw him, and they thought that I could, they thought he could beat me,
Oh shit.
Yeah. And finally, we're swimming, and I was like, wow, this guy is, we're probably around the same level or same pace.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this guy, I might be able to like beat him,
Yeah.
But sure enough, I did. You know, everyone's all like, you know, celebrating and happy.
Right.
I was happy, right? But no one at my team really cared, right? Because I mean, I was with these other guys who were jocks, and you know, they were all cool and stuff, you know.
Right.
But I was happy for myself, you know.
Yeah, for you, it was like a celebration.
For me, I was like a victor. I was like, wow.
Like, yes, I beat him.
Exactly.
That's dope.
So it was a lot of fun. It was a good experience.
That's awesome, dude. What kind of advice can you give people that are in IT or want to be an engineer, but they're a little introverted? Because one thing that I see is, at least a lot of my friends that are in technology or IT and programming, they're a little more on the introverted side.
No,
you're not even like that at all. Or were you at one point? Because it seems like you're just very outgoing today.
Yeah. I think I was always outgoing, but I didn't really have a lot of friends. So like, I had friends when I was in elementary school, but like all those friends when I went to junior high, decided I wasn't cool enough because I was really short.
Yeah.
You know, because I was in 7th grade, but I looked like I was in 4th grade. And, you know, a lot of those friends kind of like, you know, wrote me off. If you're an introvert and you want to get into technology, that's fine too. You just got to like, you know, read your books, or, you know, there's like websites like Hacker Rank X. So there's like websites that allow you to like write some code and then see how good you are.
Right. Cool.
That kind of thing. So I mean, like, if you want to get better, there's all these like websites. There's also something called a boot camp. So these boot camps cost like $20,000-$30,000, and they're in major cities.
Holy shit. Okay.
And what they do is they basically get you in, and for 3 weeks straight, you're there at this boot camp for like 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Studying to become a software engineer.
Wow.
Yeah. So these boot camps, they, you know, if you're really interested in it, they basically grill you. They do mock interviews. They do mock, you know, exams, mock coding, how a, you know, software code is supposed to be made, how it's pushed out to production, build pipeline. And a lot of times, a lot of these people, like, you know, you could be an accountant, and all of a sudden you go to a boot camp and you're making like $100,000 a year.
Wow. Dude.
Yeah. So it's worth it. Like, if you spend $30,000 and you're making $50,000, right? You could be like an economics major, you know, a guy working at a rental car business. You know, you could make $50,000 doing that. All of a sudden, you spend $25,000. Now you're making $100,000 or $80,000 as a software engineer. Then it was worth it. So like, they now have these accelerated programs that you could take to get all the skills you need to become a engineer.
That is fucking so cool, man. That did not exist.
And you know what? I actually was thinking I can do the same things. So like, you know, my craft is very similar to software engineering, but basically I could probably create like a system, because if you're a system administrator, because I was a system administrator and I moved into DevOps, which is very similar, except that a DevOps person knows a little bit of programming. So, you know, back in the day, a system administrator would like administer like 50 servers.
Right.
Nowadays, that same system administrator may have to manage 400 servers. Well, how do you do that in the same amount of time?
Right.
Well, you got to like write a lot of code, like a lot of tools. You got to build a lot of tools and scripting.
Right.
So like, you know, you can't just log into every machine and type in one command.
Right.
You got to be able to like use a bunch of tools so that you type in one command and makes it apply to like 100 machines, right, or like a subset of that, or, you know, you got to like categorize your servers a certain way, like put them in different environments, different roles, different purposes, and then you could be, you know, once you like, you know, install all that kind of stuff, then you could then control your servers in a more organized fashion. Imagine if you have like a deck of cards, and it's like, all right, we got to do something with all of these aces, right? Like how much time it takes to sort off all those aces. But if you had a sorting mechanism to grab those aces and do something with it, like, hey, I got to move these aces on this side of the table, then this is what the tooling is. This is what DevOps is. DevOps is basically system administration, but knowing some programming so that you can do your tasks a lot faster. Nowadays, you know, if you're very good at what you do, you could be controlling like 1,500 machines. A single administrator, 1,500, even 3,000. Well, and they're going to pay you a little more money to do that, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, we used to have, you know,
there was only one or two you would be controlling.
Yeah. Like back in the day, they would have 5 system administrators controlling 50 servers each, right? We got 250 servers right now. We got 5. Well, nowadays, you know, our entire budget is $500,000 a year. because you're getting paid 100,000 each. Well, now they're like, you know what? We're going to pay just one guy 250,000. We're going to cut our budget in half, and you're going to have to be able to manage 250 servers.
Wow.
And there's those jobs that have that. So like, if you're that good and they believe you're that good, you're going to get that kind of job. Yeah. So like there's that whole spectrum, right? Like it's like anything, like you got your salsa dancers that are level 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and then you got the superstars. And that's kind of the same thing for these system administrators. So they'll pay you more money if they think you can do more things,
Right.
So if you're like a superstar, level 7 salsa dancer, and every time every time you have a lesson, there's like always 100 people showing up, then you're going to get a little more money than the guy that's a level 6, right? That's just the way it is. So, I mean, you're looking now at very the top people and the people that can perform at that level, there's a market for that,
That's dope, man.
Mm-hmm.
Boss, bro. So, dude, what motivates you, dude?
What motivates
every morning? What motivates you every morning, dude?
Well, I'm married now, and I have a 2-year-old son. So I mean, what motivates me is seeing my son in the morning. Cool. He's awake bright and early. So I mean, that's he's very motivated. To see my family. There's a lot of trends in technology that's coming out. Artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning.
Right. What do you think the future holds in regards to that?
Well,
what's the future look?
There's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be that's going to change or be eliminated, with these new technologies coming out. So I mean that interests me. I think we're at the very early stage of that. Okay. So I mean, think of the copy machine. Like the copy machine was invented by Xerox in the 60s or 70s, mm-hmm. and they made very bad copies. Like it was not good at all. Like who the hell ever want a copier? Right, like you look at it, it was like a really bad copy of your document, right? Like
ginormous.
Yeah, it was like a lot of carbon on it. You could barely.
Right.
But sure enough, a couple of people bought it, and they were using it somehow, right? But if you were a law firm, it was still better to have a secretary type, it from a fresh piece of paper, and type it out for you.
Right.
Well, I think we're in that same kind of phase for now, robotics and artificial intelligence. Like these things are not very good right now, and it's kind of like a hobby. But eventually, it'll get good, good enough where it'll start, being adopted by certain industries. And for me, I want to work on that really bad copier. Yes, right now, we got this really bad copier that does some, very limited things. Everyone's going to laugh about it, but eventually, over time, it's going to become something that everybody's going to want. So we're at that.
We're at that stage now.
We're at that stage now where I can choose an industry and start making those bad copiers, and then hopefully somebody accepts that, and then eventually the copy's going to get better and better, where it's like a perfect copy of what you're trying to do. That's the same thing for these robotics technologies, and you got self-driving cars, which are really bad. Like right now,
except for Tesla. Tesla's pretty good.
Yeah, Tesla's pretty good, but I mean, in some circumstances, it doesn't work, right? So there's only going to be a matter of time where it's going to get better. So for me, I like to get involved in some kind of technology where, it's at an early stage and, it has a good ramp for, 10, 15 years.
In your opinion, what types of jobs do you think are going to be eliminated because of the robotics and all that?
Well, manufacturing jobs, that's already sort of happening.
Yeah.
There's already a lot of robotics doing welding, moving parts around. So if you have an assembly line, a lot of those manufacturing jobs will be eliminated for sure. Right. Other jobs will probably be, retail. So going to the shopping mall and going to your store to buy something. So that's under a lot of pressure right now.
Right.
Let's see here.
What about the rise of AI? Because there's a lot of people that have, different opinions about it. Some people are, wow, AI is awesome. Other people are a little bit scared of it. They're like, they fear AI.
Right. Well, you don't really need to fear AI because AI currently is at such a primitive level.
Right.
And they're already working, people say, oh, we're at that point where AI is going to do something about the world, and really not.
I think that all comes from Terminator, man. Everyone thinks it's the rise of. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's where all this thinking is coming from.
Right. I think AI is coming and it's going to replace some things. And, there's been like some, and also AI can actually be very creative.
Yeah.
There's actually a book. I don't know the name of the book offhand, but there's a book that actually has poems written by humans and by AI.
Okay.
And I've read some of those poems, and you can't really tell the difference. So, like, AI can be creative, Okay. And it's totally made up by a machine.
Right.
AI can also write music. It could DJ music. Like you give it like a bunch of algorithms and patterns, and it can make music as good as like a top DJ, right?
Yeah. Don't tell that to DJs. DJs. I can see that as the future. People are just gonna have their AI DJ for them, and they're gonna sit back.
Pretty much, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So, I mean, like AI could be creative. So I mean, like what's going on is like you don't really have to have a human to do things for you. Like think of like the moment people went from horses to cars.
Right.
Horses was like a form of transportation, and having a horse, you had a lot of emotional connection to it. It's like, hey, that's my horse.
Right.
It's a living thing. It has a personality. I pet it has feelings, and a lot of times you don't need those kinds of feelings for your car. Like when people transition from a horse to a car, what happened was, like, for example, in New York, since there was all these horses, there was a lot of horse poop all over New York.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like New York actually was littered in horse poop at one point, right? Like in the early in the 1800s, it was just all horse poop. It was like a it was very it was a disaster. It was like very dirty. So I mean, you had a lot of like diseases, forming with all this horse poop. So one advantage of going from horses to a car was that you no longer had horse poop on every corner. That would just sit around there all the time. Now, and
that's a good point.
And when you go with a car, your car doesn't have an emotional attachment, but people did adapt, right? Like, okay, I like my car, and sure I have an emotional attachment, but like, like the horse would get tired, right? Or it could only go so far. So eventually, cars got better where it could drive you 100 miles in one day, or you can have a car that lasts you 100,000 miles. So people did that transition. It's like, all right, we don't really need to have a lot of emotion or emotional attachment. To go from horse to the car. Now that's going to be the same thing for like taxi drivers and self-driving cars. Sure,
Right.
You got your friend that you got your taxi cab driver friend.
Right.
Always called. He would always be waiting for you before you got to work, and he'd take you to work. That was your cab driver. You always had a conversation, and look, it was cool. But eventually, that's going to change now. Like people are not going to really care if no one's going to be in the car, and we're heading towards that moment now. Like right now,
you can have a conversation with the AI in your car.
Yeah, you can have a conversation with AI in the car, or just talk to somebody else. But eventually, that's going to be the same thing. It's like, hey, this job of driving people around doesn't really need to have that emotional connection there. Just like when we moved from horses to cars,
right?
And people are going to get used to it. If people want emotional attachment, they're just going to call somebody.
Right.
So, I mean, like, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, like throughout, like the 1900, Industrial Revolution, 1900s to now, it was all about people. Like people were the one that drove the economy. Like, hey, there's people working in the factory, people working in the offices, people working at the shipyards, like all this kind of stuff. And that's changing now because AI is going to be able to take over so many of these things, and we don't really need a people connection. And I think what's the problem, is going to be good in that, sure, things are going to be a lot cheaper for certain things, like transportation, but it's going to start isolating people. People are now no longer at the top of the pyramid.
Right, we're losing that. We're going to lose.
Yeah,
that
people are no longer at
connection.
the top of the pyramid. It's going to be just these machines, running everything, and the humans are somewhere around. So I mean, we're starting to.
Sounds like a fucking movie.
Yeah, so I mean, we're starting to lose that human connection. And you look at younger generation, right? Because we're obviously older generation. We're Generation X.
Right.
Millennials. Millennials don't. They're starting to say that millennials don't really have really deep friendships. They don't have deep connections.
Right.
They don't have friends like for 20 years. They don't keep deep connections. They just keep friends on their phone or a photo and some video that they laugh about. they associate, what's happening is like young people are associating themselves too much on the phone. They're associating themselves on weak connections. That's really what it is. What social media does for you is that it gives you weak, meaningless connections, and it makes you feel bad because it sounds like they're having a better time than you. So that's one reason why, sure, I'm involved in like technology. So like, the sort of technology people use for social media, but I don't really use a lot of social media because I believe it's just not a really, healthy tool to use,
Right.
It's like, it's basically like the new tobacco, right? Back in the day, hey, don't drink too much, don't smoke too much, hey, that can kill you.
Right.
Nowadays, it's like, hey, getting on your damn phone all the time, playing games, talking to people, that's actually going to be the new tobacco. That's going to be the new drug.
Right.
Hey, you're on your phone. One day someone's going to come up to you and say, hey, you're on your phone too much. It's not healthy.
Right. And
you don't drink or smoke anyways right now, but you know what? You're on your damn phone all the time.
And then one day, you're gonna
need an intervention. You're gonna need some therapy. We're gonna have to take you in to some place so that we lock your phone up in
right. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But I also think
all kinds of programs.
I also think there's gonna be a time in the future where you're able to integrate your phone with yourself.
Yeah. So I think the future is gonna be Collie, Tiny, you've been eating really well. You've been exercising. You don't smoke or drink, but we've noticed that you've been using your phone too much.
Right.
And I'm concerned about you.
Right.
And
that's
you know what?
Future.
Exactly. That's going to be the future. The future, and then also
future.
You know what you got to do, Rudolph, is you got to develop meaningful relationships. Go out to a Starbucks and start a conversation for somebody. That's what I need you to do today. I need you to just talk to a stranger and have a one-to-one, at least 2 minutes. Okay, that's where we're heading towards.
Good. I think you just created an app. That's what you just did right now. Something that just notifies you you've been on your phone too long. You need to go have a meaningful conversation for 2 minutes with a stranger.
Yeah, I think that's where we're heading towards. It's not really like healthy, but that's maybe Aurelian example, 1984 example.
That's where we're going, man. Well, dude,
yeah.
I know you got to eat, brother. So let's conclude this podcast. Thank you for being on the show, man. You've been an inspiration.
Thanks.
Your story is great from the beginning of learning everything in IT, computers, starting your own business, and then moving to Silicon Valley, and then just starting a career out there and being successful, man. I've got to witness it firsthand, see it from the beginning to where it's at now, and it's just, I'm totally impressed, dude, and I'm proud of you, brother.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, brother. And we'll talk soon, brother.
Okay.
Have a good breakfast, man.
You too.